Hey, this is Garrick from Flowmaster. Today we're going to be taking a look at our new snorkel kit for the JL Wrangler and the Jeep Gladiator. It has everything you need to go from the throttle body to the roof. Now let me show you some of the awesome features that it has. First, we have a large molded air intake tube, the same one that we use on our Delta Force performance air intakes to maximize the amount of airflow coming to your engine. Next, we have an inverted dual cone air filter to maximize filter area and airflow. One-piece snorkel tube for maximum strength and clean styling. Molded exterior trim rings to finish off your clean appearance. Snorkel grid to keep out large debris. Finally, we have the clear etched airbox lid. Allows you to see your filter, is watertight, and adds a little bit of extra style to your engine bay. Included in the kit, we've provided a large paper template for laying out where you're going to be cutting the hood. Now there is one last thing I would like to talk about. This kit actually exceeds the flow of the factory intake on the vehicle, and we have dyno tested this to ensure that there would be no power loss. Let's go ahead and get this thing installed. Tools for the job are wire cutters, 5/16 nut driver, 13/16 wrench, ratchet, extension, 10mm socket, M4 Allen wrench, small round file, small flat file, die grinder, pneumatic air saw, riveter, drill, 1/8" drill bit, masking tape, Teflon tape, and razor blade. Now we have everything laid out on the bench. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to grab the air filter adapter, the air filter adapter gasket, 3 of the long M6 screws, lock washers, and flat washers. Taking the air filter adapter gasket, set it onto the air filter adapter, aligning the 3 holes with the threaded bosses, like so. With those aligned, we'll take the air filter adapter, put it into the air box, aligning the same holes, and secure it with long M6 screw using a lock washer and flat washer. Take your M4 Allen wrench and begin to tighten. With the air filter adapter already installed, we're going to go ahead and go to the bottom side where we're going to install the bracket and the mounting system. We're going to take this bracket, attach it with 2 short M6 screws and their appropriate washers. With those hand tight, we're going to put the plastic push-in barbs on, and we're going to secure them with the 2 long M6 screws. With the airbox assembled and off to the side, we're going to grab the snorkel tube, and we're first going to install the snorkel grid that goes up on the top here. Now taking the snorkel grid, we're going to set it onto the tube, check that everything looks like it lines up pretty good, and we're going to start on one side using a drill and an 1/8" drill bit, hold it tight and in the correct position, and drill through using the grid as a guide. Now that we got the first hole in there, we're going to go ahead and install a rivet so that we can hold it in place. On the opposite side of the first rivet that we put in, we'll go ahead and do the same thing. With the second hole drilled, we'll go ahead and install another rivet. Now that we have a rivet installed on each side to hold it in place, you can go ahead and drill the remaining holes and install the remaining rivets. Now that we have the tube assembled and the airbox assembled, it's time to put the 2 of them together. We're going to grab the gasket, align it, and start a couple screws through it to help hold the gasket in place. Now that we have the snorkel tube and the airbox assembled together, we're going to work on the intake tube. First, we're going to install the rubber grommet that's going to be used for the intake air temp sensor. Make sure it's installed all the way so that the flange is fully exposed on both sides. Next, we're going to install the aluminum quick connect fitting. First, you apply Teflon tape to the threads. Then install it to the threaded port here. Tighten it up with the 13/16 wrench. Now with the grommet and the quick connect already installed, we're going to put the couplers on, but we're going to leave them loose so that we can adjust it when we put it into the vehicle. Please note the orientation of the 90-degree coupler. You'll want to leave it loose so that you can adjust it when you get it in the vehicle, but this is approximately where it will be. Now with the snorkel tube and airbox assembled and the intake tube ready to go, we're going to go ahead and move over to the Jeep where we're going to install the brackets that are going to hold this. The factory rubber grommets on the bottom here will need to be reused in the installation of our snorkel. So if they come out with the airbox when you remove it, pull them off and return them to the engine bay where they belong. Now reinstalling the rubber grommets, they go here and they just go ahead and slide in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove these two factory bolts. With the two factory bolts removed, we're next going to install the paint protection film that we have supplied. You'll want to wipe it down with alcohol or something to get it nice and clean. And then you'll want to peel the backing off and then set it on, aligning all the square holes that are cut out. And then apply it from the inside going outward. With the backing removed, be careful not to touch it against anything you don't want it to. With all the holes aligned, push out all the air bubbles, working your way forward, and double check that everything looks like it is where you want it to be. Starting back by the holes, go ahead and push out all the air, and pulling it tight, work your way down, making sure that you get it folded nice and tight into the corner. Alright, with the paint protection film applied, we're going to next install the bracket. Same thing, line up the square holes, install the two factory bolts, and one supplied bolt with a captured washer is going to fill the third hole. At this point, you want to raise and lower the hood, make sure that you're going to have proper clearance in the groove there. And once you're satisfied with that, you're going to go ahead and tighten it down. Now that we've verified that we have the proper clearance, we're going to go ahead and tighten it up. The next bracket that we're going to install is going to go to the A-pillar. It goes underneath the trim piece here and uses the same bolts to secure it as the handle here. First step, we're going to have to remove this speaker cover here. It's just held on by plastic clips. And then there are two covers, one on the top and one on the bottom. They're two different screws. So pull those out of the way. And with those out of the way, we're going to go ahead and pull out the bolts that are inside. Alright. Same as the fender, we're going to install the paint protection film. You want to make sure that it's clean and ready to go. Align the stamped out hole with the bolt hole running underneath this wire loom here. Gently press it on, working your way to the outside. And just double check that it is in the position that you want it to be before you push it on all the way. Take the bracket, align the hole. Make sure that the paint protection film is on both sides of it and is going to be protecting your paint. Now with the paint protection film firmly pressed on, you're going to want to take a razor blade and slit it right in the middle between the A-pillar and the window frame. Roll it onto the inside and press it firmly on. The next step is to install the bracket. So we'll go ahead and we'll line it up just like so. Take the cover piece that we just recently removed, And with that in place, we'll take the lower bolt, push it back in, and make sure that we are running through both the handle and the A-pillar bracket. Go ahead and start the bolt. And then before tightening it all the way, start the next bolt. With both bolts started, make sure that the alignment of this bracket is good. It's not putting too much pressure on one side or the other. It should be just barely off the paint. Tighten the lower bolt and the upper. Reinstall the caps. So we have one piece of paint protection film left. It's just a small rectangle. We're going to use it to protect the front door edge here in case that bracket wiggles or anything like that. We don't want to damage the paint. So you're going to close the door nice and slow. Make sure that nothing's hitting, everything looks good. Peel the backing off. Align it so that you have paint protection film on both sides of the bracket. Go ahead and gently set it on. Don't push all the air bubbles out yet. Open your door again. Pull back the seal and roll it over the edge. Go ahead and work out all the air bubbles. And double check everything again. Now that the brackets are installed, we're ready to put the snorkel tube and the air box in. The plastic barbs on the bottom of the air box are going to drop into the factory rubber grommets in the bottom here. We're going to install the 3 bolts here, finger tight. We don't want to tighten these bolts up yet because we want to leave room for adjustment as we install the rest of the brackets. Then we'll install the 2 short bolts that go on the A-pillar bracket. Once again, you're going to want to leave these finger tight so that there's room for adjustment. Now with all the bolts in hand tight, we're going to get everything adjusted and then we'll go ahead and tighten it up after that. Now that we have the snorkel tube and the air box on, we're going to go ahead and install the intake tube. The last thing to do on the tube before we install it in the vehicle is install the factory intake air temperature sensor. Make sure to orient it to where it is in line with the airflow. First, you're going to slide it onto the air filter adapter that is in the air box, and then you're going to slide it onto the throttle body. Make sure the throttle body coupler is seated all the way and tighten it down. And then you can adjust everything and tweak the rotation until you get everything to line up right. You want to make sure to get the quick connect all lined up and connected and just double check that everything looks good. We want to make sure that the intake temp sensor is on the back, pointed out, easy to access. Rotation looks good, everything's clear, and all the couplers are in place. We can go ahead and tighten it down. Make sure to adjust the clamps to where you can easily get to everything. Connect the extension harness, route it through where you're comfortable, and then connect it to the factory sensor. Now that we have the intake tube in, everything's connected, and we've put the extension harness on there, we're going to want to secure the extension harness using some zip ties that we provide in the kit. My recommendation on where to secure this is going to be one over here holding the factory harness. Like this. And then the other one we're going to put between the factory harness and the extension harness over here. I would secure the intake extension harness to the factory harness right under the throttle body. That just keeps everything nice and secure and out of the way so that you don't have to worry about any kind of damage later on. Go ahead and trim the excess off. Now that we've installed the snorkel tube and air box and the intake tube, we're going to install the new dual cone air filter. The filter is kind of a snug fit in the air box, so you want to get it all the way seated onto the adapter, and then just go ahead and tighten it down. After you've installed the air filter, you're going to want to grab the gasket and the lid, set the gasket onto the box, make sure all your holes are aligned and everything looks good. Lay your cover right on top and start putting in your screws. As you're putting them in, make sure to get everything hand tight first. Double check the gasket as you go along, making sure that the bolt goes through the lid, the gasket, and into there nice and smooth. Now that we've got them all installed by hand, double check that your gasket aligns well, everything else looks good, and then go ahead and tighten them down. Now that we have the lid installed, there's a couple more steps that we have. The last couple of steps are going to be to adjust the snorkel tube to the exterior and to install the P-clamp that's going to retain the antenna. Slide the P-clamp onto the antenna until it falls into the groove, and then work your way down to where the insert is in the tube. Using the final short M6 screw and the corresponding washers, go ahead and get it started and tighten it up. Okay. Now that we have the P-clamp installed, it's time for the final adjustments. You're really going to want to check clearances on the mirror, as that's one of the most critical points. As we're checking the adjustment, you're going to want to open and close the door and make sure that fully open, there is still a gap here. You have a little bit of adjustment forward and backward, so you can adjust that as needed. Once the snorkel tube is adjusted and you're happy with the clearance that it has around the mirror, go ahead and tighten down the bolts holding the fender bracket to the snorkel tube, and then move up to the A-pillar bracket and tighten that as well. Now that everything's tight and secure, we're going to go ahead and get the template ready and lay out everything for cutting the hood. We've gone ahead and cut our template out already. You will have to do the same. Once it's all cut out, you'll set it onto the hood and secure it using some masking tape, starting in this back corner here. You want to align this edge on the bottom and this edge on the back. Start working your way forward, securing it with tape as you go. Front edge here, near the latch, you want to secure it about here. Keep securing it as you work your way through. So once we have it secured on this lower edge here, and we know approximately where we're going to be cutting out the hood, we're going to go ahead and fold it down and use that as a reference as to where we're going to put the masking tape to protect the paint as we're running the saw around. We don't want to get anything scratched that isn't going to be covered by the trim ring. As we begin applying the tape, we want to make sure to go to an area a little larger than the indicated cutout. The cutout on the template is actually made a little bit small so that you have a little bit of a room for adjustment as you're going through, and your tools will be sliding around a little bit, so you want to make sure to prevent any scratches from that. Now with everything taped off, you want to take the template, lay it back over, and make sure that you're happy with the amount of area covered. If you are, go ahead and start securing the remaining edges, starting in the back, and secure it with tape, and then coming up into the front. As you do the front edge, make sure that the indicated cutout for the hood latch matches really nice, and that you are on the lower edge and the front edge, and start securing. Working your way around it and adjusting as needed. We'll throw a couple pieces on the far side of this just to help keep it in place. And then we're going to raise and lower the hood a couple times and kind of make sure everything looks like it is aligned where we want it to be before we actually mark it. All right. Resting it on the snorkel tube, we're going to want to make sure that the cutout is on both sides of it, not through the middle or something like that, and that it looks like it's pretty well centered up as the arc brings it down. Now that we're happy with where the location is, we're going to lift it back up and we're going to go ahead and mark it with a felt pen. Now that we've got it all marked out, we're going to go ahead and take the template back off, double check one more time, and we can go ahead and start cutting. Now that we've got the hood marked and the template removed, we're going to go ahead and lower it down on top of the tube again and just verify that this is where we want to cut it. Everything looks good. All right, now that we've got our outline laid out where we want to cut this, we're going to go ahead and put down a rubber mat, kind of catch some of the metal shavings, keep everything protected. We're going to cut about a ½ inch in from the line to start with. Cutting it small lets us lower it down, kind of double check that everything really is where we want. If we need to shift it to one side or the other, it's better to do it as you incrementally grow. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut the hood. What I'll do next is I'll actually put it at a steeper angle and only cut through the top side to finish off this front section, and then I'll cut through both of them again, and I'll roll it off and break the seam. Okay, that should be all right. Now that we've made our first cut a little bit on the inside of this line, we're going to go ahead and lower it down, make sure everything's centered up and that we don't need to shift one way or the other, and then we'll continue on from there. Go ahead and lower it down. Right now we're touching on this inside edge, so we'll have to clip that out some more for sure, but it looks like we're pretty well centered up here. Feel pretty comfortable with it. We're going to go ahead and cut all the way out to the line, and we'll check it all again. We're now going to make our next cut. We're going to cut it all the way out to the line. It is really, really important as you do this that you incrementally work your way out. Just in case anything's off, you have the ability to adjust it. We're partway through making our next cut. As I'm working around these corners, I'm making sure to only cut through one layer at a time. The saw will fight with you a whole lot more if you try to do both at the same time. So just kind of work one and then work the other. That's a little bit easier to handle. I'm gonna go ahead and keep cutting. I'll throw my earplugs in and I'll get back to it. Now that we've cut the outside, we're going to go ahead and pull it off and trim the inside to match the profile we've just made. Now that we've gone ahead and got the inner cut out to match the outside profile, we're going to raise and lower it again, double check that everything's still looking pretty centered and that we're happy with where everything's at. We're going to go ahead and lower it down and make sure everything looks good. Should all fit around the snorkel now, so you can get it all the way closed. Looks like we've got pretty good clearance on the backside here, and we're a little tight on the front, so I'm gonna have to remove some more material there. I'm gonna take the outer trim ring that's provided, and I'm gonna set it on there, kind of gauge how much material I need to cut. Looks like I'm pretty close on the top, so I'm not gonna do any trimming on the top at first. I'm just gonna go ahead and mark the sides, and I'll put a little tick down here on the bottom, and kind of on the side. Kind of hold it in place where these are at so I know how to line everything out, tracing my line up top. Now that I've got it aligned with my ticks and we're up here, I'm going to mark out where I'm going to be wanting to cut it. Alright, now that we've got some marks made, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out again. I'm going to want to cut on the outside of this line because we trace the inside of the shape. Go ahead and kind of tie together the missing little pieces. And we'll throw some earplugs in and get to cutting again. Alright, we're gonna check the trim ring for the outside and make sure that it all fits in there. I'm binding just a little bit. When I look on the inside edge, it looks like I still need to take just a little more out of the corner, so I'm gonna take my file, kind of clean everything up, and I'll get it to fit in there nice and secure. So you can see, I'm not quite making it all the way up to the edge here. This should wrap around and lip in and hold this. When I'm looking inside, it looks like I need to clean up the profile in my upper corners up in here. So I'm going to take it off and I'm going to get this all cleaned up till it fits in nice and secure and it wraps around the edge and everything's good to go. All right, now that we've got our cutout made and we've gone around and we've cleaned up all the edges with the file, we're going to go ahead and put the trim ring on. Now you can see the trim ring fits all the way on there. It sits nice and tight on the edges. And so we're gonna lower it down, shift it side to side till we're happy, and put a couple pieces of tape to secure it. You push the hood all the way down and secure it in place. And you'll shift the trim ring back and forth until you have it pretty centered up on the tube. And then take a couple pieces of masking tape, hold it in place. Now that we have the trim ring secured with masking tape, we're going to lift the hood back up. and go on the inside, where we'll hold the inner trim ring on and make sure that we have everything trimmed out and it's ready to go. Now, a little additional trimming may be required as it is slightly larger. And it looks like in this particular instance, we're gonna have to trim out on the top. The sides seem to be pretty good. Everything fits together. There's just a little bit more that I gotta take on the top. So I'm gonna pull this back off and I'll mark it and I'll trim it just like before. Now that we've got it all marked, we're gonna go ahead and pull the outer trim ring off so that we don't damage it when we're trying to cut the inside. And we'll grab the saw and we'll get going again. For cutting the center edge, I'm going to use the die grinder with a cutoff wheel on it. By doing that, I don't have to have as much room on the inside as I did when I was using the saw. Now that we've got it cut out, we're going to go ahead and take the file again, just clean up the edge, and we'll test fit it and make sure everything's ready to go. All right, now that we've got our edge cleaned up, we're going to go ahead and retest fit the inner trim ring. Looks like we're going to need to trim off a little more in the corners here, so we'll go ahead and do that. All right, I'll go ahead and clean up the edge again, and then we'll put the trim rings back in, double check all of the alignment, and then it's time to permanently install it. We're gonna lower the hood down again, and we're gonna once again secure with masking tape the outer trim ring. So slide it on, lock the hood in place, get it centered up where we want it to be, put our tape on. Once we've got that on, we're going to go ahead and open the hood back up, and we'll reapply the inner trim ring to make sure that everything is still where we want that to be. So we've got the outer trim ring where we want it to be. We're going to go ahead and slide on the inner trim ring. Everything slides together and fits in there nice. So we're going to go ahead, take them both back off, take the masking tape off, and we're going to permanently install these. So we'll pull the inner trim ring out, and then we'll pull the outer trim ring off. Now we're going to pull the outer masking tape off that we were using to protect the paint. Next, we're going to apply the double-sided tape that's been die cut and supplied to the backside of the outer trim ring. Make sure to keep in mind that this piece is not symmetrical, so you will need to orient it correctly. This is the side that we're going to want to be towards the hood, so we're going to flip it over and peel the other side off to stick to the trim ring. Now that we've applied the tape to the inside of the outer trim ring, we're going to go ahead and go back over to the car and we're going to tape it onto the car. For applying this, we're going to follow the same procedure that we did for test fitting the trim rings. We're going to lower the hood down. And secure it into place. Now we're going to pull the backing off. All right. Now that we have the backing peeled off, we're going to slide it in here. We'll hook the bottom edge of the hood, make sure that it's aligned where we want it to be. And then with it centered up and it hooked around the bottom edge, we're going to go ahead and just press it on, working from the bottom up. Make sure to press nice and firm so you get good contact. Now that we have the outer trim piece applied, we're going to lift up the hood and we're going to put in the inner trim piece and secure it using rivets. Now we're going to take the inner trim piece and we're just going to slide it on into place. Make sure it's all the way in there and seated. Take our 1/8 inch drill bit and just punch through the holes. Make sure to only drill through the inner piece and not all the way through the outside of the hood. Next, we'll install the 4 rivets. Now that we've got both the trim pieces installed, we're going to take our foam tape and we're going to start on one edge, just peel the backing off, and apply it on the smooth inner surface here. And when you reach the other end, make sure you have it pressed on all the way. And when you're happy with that, go ahead and take your razor blade and cut off the extra. Now that concludes our installation. Install time was about 3 hours. Now it's time to get this thing out on the trails. Thanks for watching.
Be sure to subscribe to our Flowmaster YouTube channel and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.